Hi everyone, it's Brenda back again with another episode of Three Uniques. Today I have on Shulamit Ber Levtov. How are you doing today,
All
Shulamit?
right, thanks. Hi, Brenda.
It's good to have you on.
Yeah, what a thrill. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, so we met in a recent course that we were both taking called The Trauma of Money.
Mhm.
And Shulamit is your company's name, your business name is the Entrepreneur's Therapist. But I love how you identify yourself as like Shulamit is the Entrepreneur's Therapist. I love
Yes,
that. It's a complete declaration, like full sentence.
yes, that's what I am. I'm the entrepreneur's therapist.
And you work specifically with women entrepreneurs.
Yes, what I've discovered in my experience as an entrepreneur myself, but also as a therapist running a business and hanging out in business circles with other business people who are not therapists, right? Who are not attuned explicitly to mental and emotional health. I sort of had a privileged position because I believe, the business people and entrepreneurs that I was hanging out with would share more with me about the emotional side of things, about the stuff, the difficulties in particular, than
Mhm.
they would normally with others. Right. So I sort of had like an inside track to what people were going through because they knew I was a therapist. And just when they know you're a therapist, people come kind of confide in you. It's like the bartender or the hairdresser, they just
Yeah,
automatically start telling you their life story.
exactly.
And so, in my own experience, the emotional roller coaster of running a business
Yeah,
really takes a toll.
sure.
And then learning this from colleagues and folks that I was networking with, I realized that there was a real need for a therapist who understood entrepreneurship and who isn't going to say to somebody like, people who don't understand entrepreneurship, when you tell them something about like, my to-do list is a mile long, they'll
Hmm.
say, well, why don't you just knock some things, do less? Like, as an entrepreneur, what are you talking about, do less? Or even worse, they'll say, well, why don't you get a job? And like, that just makes my blood boil. I don't want a job. I want to run my business, and I want to be able to express my challenges with someone who's there to validate them instead of saying, well, you shouldn't be doing that because it's difficult. You should be doing something else.
Mm,
It's difficult, and I want support to get through that difficulty. And
right.
that's what entrepreneurs want, I think. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, no, I love that. And do you find though that people nowadays are more open? Sorry, my dog's playing with her toy. That'll happen, listeners. Sadie will want to chime in. She wants to be a part of everything. Do you find now, and I just say sort of like nowadays because people, I mean, the whole conversation of mental health, I mean, it's Bell's Let's Talk, month, and so they're promoting that right now as we're filming this. But just people are more open to talking about mental health in business. And so this whole like actually entrepreneurs can actually disclose the fact that yeah, I'm growing my business, but behind the scenes it's hard and I'm sweating it out and I need someone to talk to about all the emotions that are sort of coming up with it. Is there just sort of more openness about that now because of the openness to talk about mental health, or are you thinking that this was there before too?
No, I actually feel like I can feel it actually in my body now, some anger around Bell, Let's Talk, and some of these similar initiatives, because what they are they're as extractive and exploitive a practice as
Mm,
any other corporation. Bell makes money from this publicity and makes far more money than they raise. And if they, in my opinion, truly cared about mental health, they wouldn't be out there virtue signaling by running this. They would just be silently giving what they make from this
mm,
to initiatives, one. And two, um, that they would treat their employees better, that they would provide benefits that are more robust mental health benefits to their clients, like all corporations should, but especially if they're taking a stand on this, it would behoove them as a corporation to make sure that they have very robust benefits in that area. And that really, under capitalism, a multinational corporation that has a monopoly in the US and Canada, right? That's how they are operating in a field that's harmful to mental health. There is so much that they could do at a structural and systemic level that would have so much greater impact than this simple Bell Let's Talk performative. And I have to say
mm-hmm.
that part of the anger that I'm feeling is not only mine, but also clients, because quite a number of my clients in this month and on the Bell Let's Talk, they find that actually triggering to them, in the sense that they experience anger around this for the very reasons that I've explained to you.
Mhm.
And furthermore, that there's a lot of talk about talking about mental health. There's a lot of like performance around it's okay, but when it comes down to brass tacks, it actually isn't.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple things in there. I love the fact that you said the language of Bell or larger organizations like Bell that are sort of sponsoring this sort of mental health kick. When you go inside the actual infrastructure, it's like, are they equipping leaders? Are they equipping their teams on how to navigate trauma response? Is the workplace like psychologically safe? Do leaders know how to create a psychologically safe workplace? Employees are asking for it, but I don't know, and I agree with you, I don't know if organizations are equipping their leaders, their managers with skills, abilities, or resources, folks like yourself that could come in there and coach and train those people on how to respond if an employee is having a trigger response to something that's going on in the workplace and what to do about it. I
I
agree with
think
you.
also it's quite limited. It's a bit gaslighty to say that we can create a safe workplace, or that we could, as leaders in a workplace, say to our subordinates that it's safe here, emotionally safe,
Hmm.
because ultimately it's a relationship of exploitation. That surplus labor is the surplus labor is goes to the people. That's capitalism, is the extraction of the value of surplus labor, right?
Right.
And so as an employee, my ability to my survival, right, food on the table, roof over my head, depends upon my compliance at work. And so
Hmm.
to say in a situation where my survival depends on it, that it's okay for me to be vulnerable, but that only goes so far, because if you're too vulnerable, you're fired, or
Right.
if you're too vulnerable, you're disciplined, or if you're too vulnerable, it's just so problematic. I think that we can do better, for sure. And at the same time, I think it's overstating it to say that we could even hope to aim for psychologically safe workplaces. I think it would serve us better. It would serve our mental health better for it to be explicit that there are limits here and only certain things here, and that this actually isn't safe here, that we have ways in which we can care for you, but there are limits to that. And when you hit the limit, that to be explicit about this is the limit, rather than saying, oh no, this is a mentally health friendly workplace. And then, which, if you're having trouble and you're saying you're having trouble and people are saying back to you, oh no, it's fine, well, then that's a threat to your mental health, because they're undermining you and gaslighting you, right? They're
Yeah,
telling you what you think is real isn't real. And that's like a whole mental health issue right there.
totally. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you also, thank you for those last points. I wanted to also ask you, because you're working with women entrepreneurs, especially in the last like 6 or 7 months. I mean, we've seen some pretty horrific numbers coming out of the US, but Canada hasn't necessarily been like sugarcoating it and doing much better. Mass amounts of women leaving the workplace, some going into start their own business, looking at alternative ways to work. But because of the impact of the pandemic on childcare, women are still feeling forced to be like the only ones to like leave their job and go home. Like and we're seeing numbers like they're showing like regression like back to like the 70s.
Yes.
It's going to take us like another 20 years to get kind of back up. And where we were even before the pandemic, it was saying like stats are out there where it's going to take us another 20 years to get on boards and still be in the dominant C-suite positions, et cetera, in organizations or Fortune 500 companies. We're just like sort of cracking that. And now we're seeing women exiting even more. How is that playing out into some of the women that you're working with, or women that are thinking about going into entrepreneurs? I just want to know, like, from your perspective on that, what are you seeing,
Right.
or your
So
thoughts on it?
I'll come to answer your question in a second, but it's just, isn't it funny the way things go? Again, I'm feeling kind of angry. Actually, I'm like, again, feeling that anger energy in my chest.
Hmm.
I remember what it was like in the 60s and 70s. I was a teen in the 70s and watched my mother struggle in that context of women working outside the home. And when the pandemic hit and I saw what happened to women and women's roles, and especially with the loss of access to childcare and educational, like to the formal school,
Right.
it was very clear to me. We used to say how much things have changed for women, and how much men have changed, and how much men have stepped up, and how the culture has changed, and men are being more active fathers and all that kind of stuff. And what I see, the way I look at it is, in fact, nothing has changed. Men are still off the hook because we put in place so-called, in quotation marks, national childcare, and school has extended now so that we've got pre-kindergarten that's like government funded, we don't have to pay for. And that made it look like culture had changed and men were more engaged and women were doing fewer childcare responsibilities. But in my mind, the pandemic reveals that to be the lie it truly is. Because when you took all those things, what we saw was all of a sudden women again were primarily responsible for childcare. And worse than that, women working full-time from home were expected by their employers to continue to do their full-time work at home while their spouse, usually their male spouse, I'm talking about heterosexual families, the male spouse, his job took priority and his meetings took priority, and his space and time in the bedroom with the door closed to do his work was considered protected. And so the woman would sacrifice her time and her work, but at the same time be subject to pressure from her workplace with no accommodations whatsoever for the child care response. So that cultural thing just really made me really mad, and it still makes me angry because it just again shows the lie that really not much has changed in that regard. And as a result, then, like you say, we saw women just giving up working because it was just too much.
Too much, yeah.
We also saw, what I saw was a lot of women who were in business prior to the pandemic, who did rely on childcare for their in order to be able to work, had to shut down their businesses because suddenly they were at home working from home, and always had been, but now they were responsible for childcare congruent with doing their work responsibilities and running their businesses. And this is a thing that I've heard from a lot of women who work at home, that family and spouses don't really consider that they're actually working and that their work matters. Oh, well, I can just drop in. I can just phone you. You can just do this errand for me. You work from home. You're not really working, right? And so that attitude towards women who own their own businesses and work from home really showed up in a very damaging way. It was kind of like the women I knew would kind of laugh about it and kind of grit their teeth and say, well, my family doesn't take me seriously prior to the pandemic, but the actual impact then was limited. But with the kids at home and the discounting of their work, that was the end of their work, you know? So that's, in terms of what's happening in corporate culture, you know, I've read the same thing as you have about the Great Resignation.
Yes.
And I think that it's attributable to two things. One is, as we've talked about, the dynamic around caregiving, but also people got to go home and experience, speaking about mental health in the workplace, what it was like to be free from some of the exceptionally stressful interpersonal types of unhealthy interactions that were occurring in the workplace.
Right.
Pressure not to take breaks, pressure not to pee, pressure not to eat your lunch. And also to be able to balance, like, when you're home, even though I wouldn't advocate this, I know that it's easy to do, that you can, during your lunchtime, do some laundry. Being able to multitask in that way alleviates some of the burden after hours, so that instead of doing the double shift, your second shift is maybe half of what it used to be, because it's, what's the word in English? Interwoven with your work at home.
Yeah,
and so
maximized.
So people left the corporate workplace in order to do this because it gave them that kind of, it felt like they had more time and energy because part of the load was alleviated.
Yeah. Well, and you didn't have to commute if you had to commute a lot for work. So now it's like people could go to the gym at 5 o'clock versus, oh, it's 7 o'clock and do I want to go to the gym? No.
Yeah. And commute times greater than 45 minutes have been shown to have a mental health impact anyway. And many people, I live rurally, I live in southeastern Ontario on land stolen from the Mississauga people under the Crawfords Purchase. And it's a feeder for Ottawa. Many of the people around here commute an hour and a half each way sometimes, which is an enormous, because of course it's an economically depressed area. There isn't work here. So people go into Ottawa, and having back those 2 to 3 hours every day is such a boon to their mental health, even if they don't do, quote unquote, even if they don't do anything with it.
So, where do you sort of see things going in the sense of like women entrepreneurs? Is there something that you see like from the clients that you're coaching, something that's like inspiring them, that's motivating them, where they're maybe pivoting or shifting their business as a result of some of the things that are happening, things that we've just talked about?
I think things are still in play. What's happening now, like what I've been seeing happening in the past, like from August of last year till now, which is January, well, 3rd of February,
Yeah.
2022. Um, People are really, really struggling. The people I know are
Mhm.
struggling. My clients and my colleagues and friends really are finding they're scraping the bottom of the barrel or worse in terms of energy, mood, and morale.
Mhm.
And what I'm seeing, some people are not making, like, the first thing is when you hit a difficulty, you have to really be in it for a while. You have to, like, have to.
Mhm.
Um, hang on a minute, what do I want to say? There's the awareness that comes, and for some folks, that's all that happens and you kind of stay there. But in the process of change and growth, which is like you're asking me, what are the implications?
Mhm.
What comes after this awareness and time engaging with this awareness is a meaning making to say, okay, so given that this is where I am, what are the implications for me? And what I've noticed is that the folks who are more growth minded are now engaging in this reflection around COVID has put everything in question,
Mhm.
right? What are my values? What really matters to me? And how is that going to affect my life, including my business?
Yeah.
But what
Definitely
will
see
come
that.
of that reflection, some people are really, the few that have begun to make meaning of this are, how would I say this? Redesigning what they're doing from their values that have become clear as a result of what we've gone through, rather than received ways of doing things, either from corporate culture where they retired or from the business and other coaching that they've received in growing their businesses. Because there is a way, there is a way, right? Business coaching, there's a way.
Right.
Um, Career growth, there's a way. It's growth, 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 and there's a way to do that, right?
Mhm.
And when you work with a business coach or you take a business program, that's what you're
Sure.
taught.
Yeah.
I think people are beginning to wonder, like, maybe that's not what I want to do, and beginning to redesign sort of from the inside rather than out here. But I would not say that's a trend. I would say that of the people I know who are beginning to make meaning, that's what they are doing.
Mhm.
But in the grand scheme of things, I don't really know, because I think it won't unfold fully for another 4 or 5 months, really, maybe even longer.
Maybe even longer. Yeah, I definitely see that. The people that sort of I attract, I guess, into my space are more interested in. And I always say it's like as a business coach, it's like, yeah, I can show you the formulas, the tools, the frameworks, all of those things. And yes, you're right. In business school or other coaches, they'll tell you the same thing. This is how you scale your operation. This is when you like maybe add on a virtual assistant or whomever, and what's the decision making framework that you use to make those calls in your business. And at the same time, I think people are throwing it all up and just saying, okay, what again is important to me? And they're looking at their whole life, not just the business, but like, a lot more scrutiny around relationships and who am I bringing into my space? Because before it was just easy to go network, go to a conference or an association meeting or an industry meeting, go meet someone for a coffee. But now it's kind of like, well, where can we go for coffee? Because like every coffee shop only has 4 tables. They used to have 20, and so it's like, and especially in colder weather climates where it's like we don't want to just stand outside and have a cup of coffee. Um, so people are reassessing like where they're spending time, who they're spending time with. in,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, capacity, I think, is a big word in that context.
Yes.
That we're realizing, like, there was this myth, and I think I for sure steered by that myth, and I think many people did, that we could just keep doing and doing and doing. And we did kind of like pay lip service to the fact that if we burn the candle at both ends, we'll eventually burn out. But we could always make up for that by going on vacation or whatever. You know, there was always a way to, in consumer culture, there's always a way to kind of mediate that burning the, if you've got sufficient privilege, which we have, right? We're white, middle class or middle upper class, Western, heterosexual. I pass for all those things, right?
Right. Canada.
To palliate, to get away with burning the candle at both ends. But now I think even people with privilege are discovering that there is no longer a way to do that you don't have the wiggle room you used to have. And so now the question is becoming, okay, I'm really literally crushed up against the wall of my capacity. And if that's the case, what am I going to do? And capacity applies because it's really beyond energy. It's really more like emotional capacity, because of the emotional impact of the trauma of a global pandemic, collective global trauma, plus the independent of what side of the political spectrum you're on,
Sure.
you're going to be in a great deal of pain around how the world is going. And that has an impact on your emotional capacity, right?
Right.
And then there's the emotional demands of just your business and your life. And we just don't have what we used to have. And so the question is, like, if I've only got, people with chronic illness talk about spoons, that any given day you wake up with a certain number of spoons, and it's what are you going to spend your spoons on?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Having like, and this is like, it's just a metaphor. Everybody has limited energy. It's just that people who aren't chronically ill believe that we have unlimited energy, when those of us who are chronically ill really know we don't.
Right.
We really only have, like, some days maybe you got no spoons.
Got it.
But this is the case, I think, more.
It's a good analogy. Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So more so the case with the general population, that we're really aware that we actually only do have 10 spoons or 5 or 2. And and the fewer I have, the more precious they are. And what am I going to do with those?
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah. I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay. I could like go down, I could continue down this path. I would love to hear about your 3 uniques.
Sure. How do you want to start?
You could share them one by one. You can share them all at once. Like you can say my 3 uniques are bang, 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 or you can go number 1 is this and number 2 is that. And yeah, just
all right.
Let us hear.
Well, the one I have the most fun with, you ask about what are my unique skills, strengths, or talents. And I don't know if you've heard of the Fascinate Advantage. It's a marketing thing, a marketing assessment from Sally Hogshead.
Okay.
That tells you what fascinates people about you. So it's the opposite of most of the personality tests that talk about how and who you are and what are your tendencies and preferences. This is about what about you fascinates other people, which was why it's good for marketing, right?
Yeah, sure.
So my Fascinate Advantage is prestige plus innovation.
Okay.
And I call that, and so people can Google, they'll have fun with this because it is really fun. So you'll see, I don't need to define that, but how I relate to this is I'm a nerdy weirdo. And when I was working with a coach who gave us the Fascinate Advantage assessment, and we discovered what our style was, that just really spoke to me. It really helped me understand how other people see me, but also helped me embrace the things about me that were still kind of tender from high school experience. You know, there's sometimes things that like happen to us at some point in our lives, we kind of like, they kind of come along with us for the rest of our lives and are always sort of there. Yeah. And you know, I was the one with the floods, the stretchy pants, the shirt done up to the neck, you know, so like I got a lot of, but learning to embrace prestige plus innovation, right? This nerdy weirdo side of myself, the nerd who's like, and I'm sure you can tell just from our conversation so far how nerdy I am about things.
Well, that you're pretty passionate about what you love and you know, which is amazing.
Right? So. Yeah, and I can just like really love my nerdy self, the one who just likes to go deep down the hole and learn everything about everything. That's the innovation. That's the nerdy part, or the prestige part, is the nerd, is the knowledge, like
Right.
the science, the facts. Like I know my shit. And then the weirdo is the innovation side, like thinking about things differently, taking a critical take. And you would have heard in our first 20 minutes of this conversation, I
Mhm.
have a critical take on a lot of things, right? And so just embracing my nerdy weirdo-ness was really a fun thing. And so now I love my inner nerd. I love my weirdo. And I can see how the things that I got picked on for being nerdy and weird when I was even like as a young person and even in high school,
Mhm.
um, are actually the most fun things about me and the things that I love the most. And the things that really draw people to me, at least if I'm to believe what this assessment says.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's my first unique is I'm a nerdy weirdo.
Okay, I love it. Great. And thanks for sharing how you came up with that. That's amazing.
You're welcome.
And your second unique?
My second unique, I believe that we are stronger with support. This is like my die in the ditch kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, this is a little bit my critical take on things as well, having worked in the area of mental health and personal growth for so long. You know, there's the stigma that says that if you need help, you're weak. If you ask for help, it's a weak thing to do. And it's something that stands in the way of so many people
Yeah.
to reach out, right? But if you stop to think about um, most of the people, most people are strong, competent, capable people, and especially entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
even more so, I find. And if you think about like when a new subdivision, when they put in the new trees in a new subdivision, and they have like the great big root balls, but those are below ground, and
Right.
they put the trees in and they put like this protective around the spindly tree that
Yes.
keeps the rabbits from eating it and the deer. And then they put the wire around the neck. There's a rubber kind of ring, and then they have the guy wires that, right?
Keep in place.
So
Yeah.
yes, the tree itself is strong. It's got this big root ball. It's already several years old. It's growing, it's flourishing. And yet, how much stronger it is and how much likelier it is to survive and
Yeah.
grow when it has these supports, right?
Yeah.
When we give ourselves support, we are stronger. It's a fact. And I think that it's sad that we've been led to believe otherwise.
Yeah, and I think as like on that note, and I love it. It's a great belief to instill, and even into your practice, especially coaching women entrepreneurs. I find that when, and I say this lovingly to any client that's thinking about working with me or clients that I have working with me, but it seems like it's such a big decision because humans naturally are not prone to make decisions quickly, and even if we do, we still sometimes have regret about the decision that we did make quickly. Um, because our limiting beliefs will, come into that. But
Yeah.
asking for help and knowing that it's like it's okay to get a coach or a mentor or to join an association, and if they offer a free mentorship program, but just to have that. And even for myself, when I first started my business, it was like, oh, I've run businesses before inside corporate organizations.
Yeah.
I can do this, no problem. And it wasn't until the second year of my business that I got a coach. And it was just like, oh, someone who gets me,
Right?
someone who
Yeah.
understands me. And now it's just like I just continually work with, like, I have like a coach that I work with, and I've renewed with her a few times now, and it's like we just continue to work together. But I can't see possibly, even as I continue to go up levels in my business, not having a coach now.
Right? Yeah.
But it took a while there for me to like just even, because I'm like, well, I'm a business coach. I should be able, I know what I'm doing. And if I need a coach, then I'm not a good coach for my clients. It's like, it's the complete opposite. I'm actually a better coach for my clients working with a coach.
Yes, yes, yes. And I want to refine what you said at the beginning about it's okay.
Hmm.
What I'm saying is not that it's okay. What I'm
Okay.
saying is it's more than that. It's that it makes us stronger.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
That it's a strength. And you've just articulated that as you told your story about how much stronger you are because you've got someone there with you. Right. And I mean, if we just think physically, like in terms of a dam that has a hole in it,
Hmm.
and the dam, we buttress the dam, we re-engineer the dam, we add in the supports, like it's obvious it's stronger because we've added another layer, right? And you're stronger because you've got that support. When you get wobbly, you can turn to someone instead of collapsing. they hold you up, and then you get stronger, and then they can kind of pull back a little bit and you can go on your own. It's just such a powerful thing, and it's even a neuropsychological principle. And I'll demonstrate with my hand. If you imagine, this is like the brain in the palm of your hand, so the back of your arm is your spinal column. Then you have the reptilian brain at the back, the mammalian brain in the middle with the thumb across the palm, and then the fingers are curled across the thumb so that you have sort of a fist. This is the prefrontal cortex. And what happens to humans when we get in trouble, when we're stressed, when emotions are high, the amygdala in the mammalian brain gets hot. And when it gets hot, when it gets activated, the prefrontal cortex goes offline. We flip our lids.
Right.
Our wise CEO self goes offline and doesn't communicate with the rest of us. And so when we can sit with somebody whose lid is on, that allows our lid to come back on again, and we can access once again our inner strength and wisdom, right? So that's a neuropsychological principle that illustrates the truth of how much stronger we are with support.
Love it.
And this is what you're saying about the role of your coach, right?
Yeah.
You're wobbly, she comes in, you calm down, and then you got your shit and you're on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we know that co-regulation, we know that like we even see this with animals. We're primates at the core. And
Yeah.
when animals come together and they nap together or they feed together, it's like they're just stronger as a pack.
Yes.
So,
100%.
yeah.
And I want to add a little caveat to this, which you alluded to when you were telling your story. It's not randomly asking for help everywhere from anybody.
Right.
It's important to be discerning.
Mm-hmm.
We actually know who responds in what way when we share things. We know who says things that are helpful and who says things that are not, right? And so asking for help is not just random asking for help. It's using your discernment to find and choose and ask for help from the people you know are helpful.
Lovely.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And your third unique.
My third unique is in terms of my past, present, and future experiences. I'm a trauma survivor.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that has been, okay, wait a minute. I want to stop and I want to put a caveat.
Okay. You can do
Because I
that.
think it's really important if there are trauma survivors listening. I am in no way saying trauma's good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in no way saying everything happens for a reason.
Okay.
I could get angry about those things.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, it's not like you don't want to serve out platitudes, right? So it's just
I don't. I absolutely do not. And after time passed and I had support to do the healing that I needed to do for myself, to be able to take good care of myself and accompany myself, which is to some degree a function of privilege, that I had access to these things. It is what has given me, that is what grew my resilience skills. And I think that that resilience, those skills that I learned surviving those experiences, are what served me well as a therapist now and also as an entrepreneur. I think that there's really gold in them thar hills for me. And that has been, it's just a really precious gift because it gives me skills, but it also it's been transformative for me as a person. And I completely would not be who I am today if not for those. I mean, I think that's a truth about all of us. We would not be who we are today if not for what we had been through.
Right.
But it's true for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's formulating, because where the three uniques come in to play is like when we go back to some of that earlier conversation that we had about people getting clear with their values. When you get clear with who you are and why you're here on the planet and what you're here to generate, and again, not to make light of people's past traumas or current day traumas, and not to use that cliche of it's here for a reason, but it does start becoming like to make sense. It's like the things that I'm doing today, the things that I love, the things that I'm passionate about, and the experience that I've had, past, present, and soon to be future. If I can get those in alignment in all areas of my life, then there's that clarity of who I am, what I'm here to do.
Yes.
versus, I'm this way to these people and I'm this way and I'm tucking this behind me and I'm not showing up this way. It's like you're nerdy weirdo. It's like I can be fully my nerdy weirdo versus
Yeah.
in high school, it's like, oh no, it's not going to be accepted.
Yeah.
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 I love it.
I think it can be very healing to find and create meaning in life experience from the inside out.
Hmm.
I think there's a big difference from having somebody tell you, oh, it's God's will, or everything happens for a meaning. And for you yourself to arrive at the awareness that there was some divine intention in what happened to me.
Hmm.
But not everybody's going to go there. And that isn't even the case for every situation or every person. But when it comes from the inside, then it can be a real resource. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing them.
You're welcome.
A couple last questions for you, because I know we've taken up a lot of your morning or your afternoon, and I really appreciate it. When we were talking earlier and you were demonstrating to us about the amygdala and the reaction and the impact that it has on our cortex, um, is there something that you do, a habit, a practice, a ritual that helps you regulate yourself as far as those triggers that could ignite the amygdala?
Yes. So I will preface this by saying that this is information I'm going to give you that is going to be in your frontal cortex. And so you might hear this and think it's a good idea and then get in a situation where your lid is flipped and not remember because it's in your lid and your lid is gone.
Right.
But practice over time takes it out of your lid and more fully into the rest of you so that it becomes the thing that you do. And it is by virtue of many years of practice that this is now the thing that just happens organically from me, from within me. When I'm feeling distressed, the first thing is I notice, oh, I'm kind of worked up. And now I notice much sooner than I used to,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the first step is noticing, ooh, like this is I'm having a moment. It's like a little bit, I'm stressed or I'm whatever, angry, frustrated, whatever. And you can see that I've made the gesture of placing my palm down on my chest area. This is my favorite gesture. This is a real regulating gesture for me.
Mm-hmm.
Other people might use other gestures. You could try this if you wanted.
I'll do it. Yeah.
Because it feels good, I'm just pausing to take in, because just the touch, I find it engages my parasympathetic nervous system, my relaxation response.
Mm-hmm.
And that, calms the amygdala, just that self-soothing gesture. And then what I like to do is validate for myself,
Mm-hmm.
which is often when we feel crappy, we're like, I feel crappy, don't feel crappy. And then the next thing we say to ourselves is, what's the matter with me? Why am I feeling crappy?
Right.
What's
Snap
going
out of
on?
it. Snap
Right?
out of it.
Well, not even snap out of it yet, but with the inquiry,
Right.
what's going on? And it's a different way of doing that, to say, right, no wonder I'm struggling. So for example, this morning, I just came from a reassessment at the hospital. I've been waiting for a hip replacement surgery. And I learned at the hospital this morning that I'm going to have to walk with a walker now,
Mm-hmm.
which was, hard to take. And then I came home and read an article by a social worker about what it's like to be doing therapy as a therapist during COVID times.
Yes.
And those two things together, and I just felt it coming. And reading her validation, I just went, and I'm actually feeling a little bit of the tears now. I just said to him, no wonder, like, no wonder I'm having a hard time, because these times are hard.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this moment of validation.
Yeah.
And I find that those two steps of like, oh, this is tough, I'm struggling right now, the self-soothing gesture, and then the validation. Well, no wonder, of course, this is difficult. What I'm trying to do is hard. That really helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And hope everything works out okay with your hip.
Well, it's a Canadian healthcare system. Thank you. I'm happy to wait. I'm not dying. I'm happy that waiting means that we all get care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And my last question for you, Shulamit, is if I was to give you a billboard and you could put it anywhere in the world and put anything on it, what would it say and where would you put it?
it would say love, both fierce and tender, is a
Mhm.
powerful resource for change. And where would I put it? I can only have one and I can only put it one place. Like I would really want it to be everywhere. I would really want it to be on the like what's coming to me now is on public transit. I would want it like, on public transit where they have the things all, I would want it on every bus.
Oh, inside the bus on those little inside
Yes,
banners.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice. Can you say it one more time? Do you remember?
yes. Love,
Uh-huh.
both fierce and tender, is a powerful force for change.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your three uniques with us.
Thanks, Brenda. This was so fun to get to know you a little bit and to talk about things I'm just so passionate about.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing for our listeners. And as I say to everybody at the close of our podcast, remember that there's 7.8 billion people on this planet. Somebody needs what you've got. So get out there and share your three uniques. Thanks for sharing yours.
Thanks.